Yo, what is good people? Ben from Lover of Tech, and we are back with another video, this time camera comparison. We don't usually do this, but it is a four-way camera comparison, and this is going to be between the Nothing Phone 2, the Phone 2a Plus, which is obviously the latest device in this particular situation, versus the Phone 2a and the CMF Phone 1. Throughout the whole Nothing family products for 2023 and 2024 especially, let's see which is best when it comes to the camera and how much you have to spend to get it. We're going to test daylight, low light when it comes to pictures and videos for the front and rear facing cameras, so sit back and relax. Let's get into this camera comparison. Now let's flip the script and actually analyze the photos first. Now usually in my camera comparison, I do analyze the video section first, but based on some feedback, I thought let's just flip the script. Let's look at photos first between the Nothing Phone 2, the Phone 2a Plus being a new phone at the time of this recording, the Phone 2a, the CMF Phone 1. This is the whole Nothing Tech family products when it comes to their mobile photography and video. So let's analyze them and see how they perform. Let's start with the daytime images with the rear cameras. And with this particular situation, we're going to start with the ultra wide, and as we're looking at them, personally to me, the Phone 2a Plus and the Phone 2a really do not look any different. They pretty much look the same. It's really hard to tell them apart. Where the difference really happens here is what you're seeing with the CMF Phone 1 and the Phone 2. I really like that natural look of the Phone 2. It looks very realistic, and the CMF Phone 1, it's okay, but again, it does not have an ultra wide angle camera, so that's what you're losing out when you get to the CMF Phone 1. And we'll move over to the main wide sensor. Again, there is a bit more saturation in the sky with the Phone 2a Plus compared to the Phone 2a. But in terms of how the look of the image is, I do like the Phone 2a Plus in this particular one. It's a really nice, pleasing look across the board. Now we'll move over to the 2x zoom crop mode. This is doing a 2x digital crop in the main wide sensor because there isn't a dedicated zoom lens on any of these devices. So just bear that in mind and take that into account. We are seeing some color fringing around the metal poles on the Nothing Phone 2 image, but I do like the color balance and the color tone of it. But overall, the image integrity of the Phone 2a Plus looks really good. When it comes to the CMF Phone 1, it looks like it's fallen apart, and the Phone 2a, that one, it looks like the digital image processing is really over accentuated, so just something to consider. Now when we look at the 10x maximum extended zoom range, you can see that these are phones that aren't built for that. There isn't a dedicated 3x or 5x zoom for it to be able to have a clear resolve, so I would not recommend it, but I'm just showcasing it so you can see that it's not really built for it. Now these phones do have high resolution 50 megapixel sensors, and you are able to tap into that and do 50 megapixel JPEG modes, and of course you do have 50 megapixels on the main wide sensor across the board. So this is the image, and a day like this, which is kind of very rare in the UK even during summertime, where it's really nice and clear sky with the sun, this is the most ideal situation to use it, because once you take it, you can crop in and zoom and it is still good image resolve. Now you do have it on the ultra wide angle on the Phone 2a Plus as well as the 2a, but of course there isn't an ultra wide angle camera on the CMF Phone 1, so more flexibility on the other devices. Now let's flip it to the front facing camera and look at some selfie images across the board. And between the Phone 2, the Phone 2a Plus and the Phone 2a, I can't tell a difference. It pretty much looks the same to me. What does look different is the CMF Phone 1. Yeah, it does look much softer, and in terms of the color processing, it is slightly more fair on my skin, whereas the others are naturally very accurate and they pretty much look the same. I could not tell a difference. When we go over to portrait mode, you can see that the edge detection and the processing, again, very similar across the board, especially when it comes to the Phone 2, Phone 2a Plus and the 2a. CMF Phone 1, in terms of the color processing, slightly different, but the portrait mode performance, pretty much on par. Last set of daylight images with the rear cameras with me in the frame as the subject, and of course we're starting from the outside and working our way in. This particular situation from the ultra wide, again, the Phone 2a Plus and the Phone 2a, I don't know, let me know. I can't tell them apart. They're so alike in terms of the image and the look. What you're pretty much getting in the difference is the fact that the Phone 2 is pretty much a very contrasty based image, so it has more character. But yeah, between the Phone 2a Plus and the Phone 2a, I can't tell the difference. And of course the CMF Phone 1 doesn't have an ultra wide, so we're gonna have to switch over to the wide sensor like what's seen right now. And things do look a bit different when it comes to the Phone 2a Plus and the Phone 2a as they're next to each other. As we're looking at it, in terms of the Phone 2a, it does have a much more contrasty based image in terms of the final output and look, whereas things are a lot more fair and lighter on the 2a Plus, whereas I do like what I'm seeing in the Phone 2. And the CMF Phone 1 is not doing too bad for what the phone is at that price point. And we're doing the 2x digital crop, and in this particular situation, the CMF Phone 1 actually holds okay, but it just doesn't hold candle, especially when it comes to the Phone 2. The dynamic range and how it holds and pulls things together is so nice and pleasing. And of course, the 2a Plus and the 2a are not bad, but I do feel like the 2a for some reason to my eye does look like the slightly better image, even though the skin tone is slightly better on the 2a Plus. I do like what I'm seeing on the 2. And now we're showcasing the 50 megapixel JPEG modes across the board. And of course, you do have it on the ultra wide angle camera on the Phone 2, Phone 2a Plus, and the Phone 2a. And in terms of the image resolve, this is really good. And this is the best ideal situation to use it when the lighting condition is optimal like this. So great flexibility on both the ultra wide and the wide when it comes to the Phone 2, 2a Plus, and 2a. And of course, with the CMF Phone 1, it is just on the main wide sensor. So just bear that in mind if you are picking your camera sensors in terms of the experience across the board for these devices. Portrait mode, and as we're looking at portrait mode again, I can't really tell much of a difference in terms of the performance for the Phone 2a Plus and the 2a. I would say maybe the 2a Plus holds it around my head a lot better, but yeah, across the board in terms of the portrait performance, CMF 1 is slightly the worst, but it's not that it's bad. But I do like what I'm seeing on the 2. The 2 is just looking very good. But across the board, it's very similar, just slight differences. And of course, the color processing to me is much more favored on the Phone 2. And as we do the 2x portrait mode, here's where things really become very difficult for the CMF Phone 1. It just couldn't really put it together. And things when it comes to the Phone 2a Plus and the 2a are very similar, but you know what? I'll say consistently the Phone 2 is the best, but overall I think all of them need a bit more work in the 2x portrait mode. As Rihanna would say, let's turn off the lights in here, baby, and look at some low light images with the Nothing Phone 2, the 2a Plus, the 2a, and the CMF Phone 1. Now, if this is your first time watching my camera comparison, if you appreciate the effort that we're putting into this setup, then be sure to like, subscribe, and turn the notifications so you don't miss any future camera comparisons on the Lover of Tech channel. Road to 100k subscribers for 2024 or no later than 2025, but let's try and do it for 2024. It's a lot of hard work, but with your support, we can definitely do it. What I try to do is take my nighttime images without night mode on, and then with night mode on, and then flash where applicable to show the differences in terms of image quality as well as the shooting experience, especially when it comes to exposure time and instantaneous shooting. So we're gonna start without night mode on first, but look, disclaimer, I honestly think night mode isn't really ever off when it comes to these Nothing products. Not to say that there isn't a difference with night mode on, but I still feel like there is some form of processing happening even when night mode is not on, so just take that into account. And a perfect example is just the Nothing Phone 2. That kind of exposure doesn't really tell me that night mode is off, but yet the moon icon wasn't ticked. You're gonna be hell-bent to see if there's gonna be a difference when night mode is on, but you're gonna pretty much process it through. And what I'm seeing on the Phone 2a Plus and the Phone 2a, not much of a difference at all. It's pretty much the same. Lowest exposure, but the cleanest image. And of course, the CMF Phone 1, in terms of exposure, it's actually second to what you're seeing in the Phone 2. So it's very interesting to see there. But of course, it is a wide angle camera, not an ultra wide. When we move over to the main wide sensor, things do bump up in exposure. But honestly, I would say that the Phone 2 is overdoing it a bit too much in my particular opinion. The look that I'm getting on the Phone 2a Plus and the Phone 2a, yeah, much preferred. And again, very identical where I can't tell the difference between the two. Now in the 2x crop mode, I would say that the Phone 2 is the one that falls apart a little bit more. And that's more because if you look at the image of the sky, it does fall apart. Things are a little bit more cleaner when it comes to how it looks on the Phone 2a, even though the foliage is a bit more muddy, whereas there is a bit more detail in terms of the grass and the foliage, what you're seeing on the Phone 2. But of course, the signs are very clear, minus what we're seeing on the CMF Phone 1, it just falls apart in the 2x mode. Okay, let's run it back with night mode supposedly active. And to me, I can't tell the difference when we're on the ultra wide with the Phone 2 with night mode on and off. Maybe a slight exposure bump, and even then with the Phone 2a Plus and the Phone 2a, it's a similar thing again. Not really much of a difference. So again, I just suspect that night mode is never really off, even when it's disabled. And again, when we go into the main 1x mode, you can see that things are accentuated when it comes to the lens flaring on the street lights with the magenta hue cast-offs. But that's the only thing I'm seeing really affecting it with night mode on. But in terms of the exposure and the look and the detail, it pretty much looks the same as before without it on. That's just me personally. And even in the 2x mode, things don't improve all that much across the board. It's pretty much near enough the same experience. The only thing I'll say is the phone 2A Plus and the 2A do bump up the exposure a little bit, but things are exaggerated and accentuated so much more when it comes to the lens flaring and the magenta hue cast on the street lamp. So something to take into account. All right, let's flip it to the front facing camera for some selfies in low light. And in this particular situation, I'm actually quite surprised the phone 2A Plus does fall behind the phone 2A when it comes to exposure. I would say that maybe it handles noise better, but it being a 50 megapixel sensor, maybe within the same sensor size, the pixels are slightly smaller. So maybe in terms of just the natural exposure, it doesn't hold candle in that sense, unless it's good daylight situations. But I would say that in terms of the balanced look, the phone 2 is the one that is actually resolving things really nicely. The phone 2A, when it comes to the exposure, is good, but again, clarity is not really there. The CMF Phone 1 is struggling on this one. So yeah, I think maybe night mode will help a bit, but looking at it, it does actually help it across the board when it comes to the front facing camera, especially when it comes to how things clean up nicely on the 2A Plus. I like the look of it. I would say that the light casting and the light magenta cast haze over the 2A is not something I'm really liking. I really like the 2A Plus and the 2, and the CMF Phone 1 is doing decent. You've also got the option to use the front screen flash as exposure, and I would say that the phone 2A overdoes it, whereas things balance out really well, especially on the CMF Phone 1, way better than I was expecting, and the phone 2 holds candle well, and the 2A Plus, nicely done. Now you do have the ability to still use portrait mode. It does get very difficult, but all these phones, if we're looking at edge detection and blur, actually do a good job. So I like the fact that based on edge detection and blur, this is actually a good look. Color processing is pretty much the same as before. Now you've got the front screen flash option as well that helps it, but overall, if I'm judging it based on the edge detection and blur, all of them do a very good job. Last set of low light images with the rear cameras with me in the frame as the subject. And again, as suspected, like I said, night mode is never really off. And if we look at the ultra wide without night mode on, yeah, the phone 2 just overdoes it in my opinion. I kind of actually like the subtle look of the ultra wide without night mode on the phone 2A, especially in the 2A, and of course no ultra wide on the CMF Phone 1. Move over to the wide sensor and things balance out really well. Honestly, it's so hard to tell between the phone 2A Plus and the 2A unless we're considering the front facing camera. In this particular situation though, I do like the phone 2A Plus and the 2A identical together, and then followed by the phone 2 and then the CMF Phone 1. When we go into the 2x crop mode, I would say that the phone 2A Plus and the 2A are pretty much holding the same. The exposure and the detail is better on the phone 2, even though the sky does muddy a bit, and the CMF Phone 1 really just does fall apart and doesn't do well on the 2x mode, as expected. Now let's activate night mode on. And again, if we're running it back, I can't tell the difference because it looks pretty much the same as before when we're starting with the ultra wide. Maybe things will look different when we go to the wide, but yeah, again, night mode pretty much is behaving the same as before. When we go to the main 1x sensor, again, to me, it's pretty much behaving the same as before. So it's almost like a placebo effect when it comes to how night mode behaves. Is it really off or is it really working and on? In this particular situation, it looks the same. Slight clarity, benefit on the 2A Plus maybe, but that could just be in the margin of error in that sense. And then going to the 2x crop mode, again, very much the same. And of course, the CMF Phone 1, it just falls apart in the 2x mode. It just doesn't like it at all, even with night mode on. Now, one thing I do appreciate with the Nothing products is that when using the ultra wide, you can use the flash alongside with it. This is a limitation that I do see on Samsung devices, so glad not to see it here. And when it comes to the flash with the ultra wide, I like the look of the phone 2A Plus and the phone 2A. Identically, they behave really well when it comes to the feel. It kind of overdoes it a bit on the phone 2 in my opinion, but hey, if you're in a big group, maybe that could actually spread very well compared to a singular person in there like me. And of course, no ultra wide on the CMF Phone 1. We'll go to the main wide sensor. I would say in this particular situation, the phone 2 looks the best out of the 4, then followed by the CMF Phone 1, and then the 2A Plus and the 2A. now in the 2x crop mode. Again, I would say the 2 actually holds the candle to be the best one with flash, whereas the other 3 do fall apart. And honestly, the 2A plus and the 2A, they're identical, man. Hard to tell between them. And of course, you've got the option to use the portrait mode. And with the rear cameras, you don't have the ability to use night mode or flash. It's just a standard portrait mode. And given the case, I do appreciate how well they're trying in low light. CMF Phone 1, when it comes to the blurring in the image, does not look that great, but at least it kind of pulls off the background blur. And the 2A plus and the 2A, again, they're just identical. And the 2, yeah, pretty much on par with the rest. So I would say it's just a very strange one in terms of lack of flexibility here, but this is what you're working with. And it's the same for the 2x mode. I don't actually suggest doing 2x portrait mode in low light, especially without the assistance of flash and a night mode. Maybe in a software update they could do it in the future, but for now this is what we're working with. Now with the photo analysis out the way, let's get into the video performance. And I would say that the best way to watch the video section of this camera comparison is on the largest display possible at the highest resolution and frame rate at 4K 60 with headphones on, so you can hear the audio switching between these 4 devices. There will be chapters linked in the description below, but definitely sit back, relax and watch it all the way through. It will be a detailed one. We're now recording on a front-facing camera on the Nothing Phone 2, the Phone 2A Plus, the 2A, as well as the CMF Phone 1. What's interesting to see is that the Phone 2A Plus does have an upgraded selfie that can record in 4K 30, which is an upgrade compared to the rest. We're just going to see how the image quality is like. Colors, detail, dynamic range, because we do get a bit of sunset in the UK, thank goodness, and video stabilization. Quick run. We are now recording in the 60 FPS video recorder mode on the front-facing camera for the Phone 2, Phone 2A Plus, 2A and CMF Phone 1. This is limited to just 1080p, but we're just seeing how the image quality is like at the high frame rate at 60 FPS. Quick run. We are now recording in a 4K UHD 30 frames per second video recorder mode on the rear cameras for the Nothing Phone 2, the 2A Plus, the 2A and the CMF Phone 1. We're just seeing how the image quality is like when it comes to now having a bit of dynamic range because there is a bit of sun, image quality, detail, as well as video stabilization. Let's take a quick run. Sick. Audience appreciating it, man. I love it. The general public. Now, just to be aware, the CMF Phone 1 doesn't have an ultra wide angle camera. And the benefit of the Nothing Phone 2 is that in 4K 30, you can switch to the ultra wide while recording continuously. You don't have to stop recording and then switch, as you can see right there. Whereas with the Phone 2A Plus and the 2A, you do have to stop recording and switch to the ultra wide to be able to change it and record in 4K 30. And we'll do that now. We're still recording in 4K UHD 30 frames per second video recorder mode on the Phone 2, 2A Plus, 2A and CMF Phone 1. We've now switched to the ultra wide angle camera on the Phone 2, 2A Plus as well as the 2A. Again, just to demonstrate that the 2 does allow you to switch between the ultra wide and the wide without having to stop recording. And let's just see how the image quality is like, dynamic range, colors, detail, stabilization. Quick run. We're still recording in the 4K UHD 30 frames per second video recorder mode. We've now gone into the 2x crop mode on the main wide sensor. This is on the Phone 2A, 2A Plus, Phone 2, as well as the CMF Phone 1. And we're just doing a steady walk. And we're just seeing how the image quality is like while it's cropped in. And again, just demonstrating the flexibility of the Phone 2. And we're going to come back to 1x, 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 and 1x. We're now recording in the 60 FPS mode on the rear cameras for the Nothing Phone 2, 2A Plus, 2A, and the CMF Phone 1. Now the difference is obviously the 2 has got the ability to shoot this in 4K 60. So on the rear camera, you can shoot on the ultra wide, but you do have to stop recording, switch lenses, and start. You don't get the continuous shooting mode. It's camera comparison for YouTube. Yeah, it's just measuring all the 4 phones at the same time. Easiest way to do that, yeah. Oh, so I ain't got enough hands.
What phones are what phones?
This is from Nothing Tech. So it's a new Android brand. So you wouldn't have probably heard of them, but yeah, they're new. So I'm just testing their phones out.
Right, you get it for free.
Wow, they give it to me to test. I've got to give it back. Nice one, fellas. So yes, I like the general public just asking questions. It's always refreshing. So as I was saying, for continuous recording purposes, you do have to stop recording, switch to the ultra wide, and then you can record in 4K 60. So on the main camera now, quick run. Let's go to the 2X mode. We're just doing a steady walk. And of course 1080p 60 on the rest. When it comes to the 2A Plus, 2A, and CMF Phone 1, where you get 4K 60 on the Phone 2. Let's switch back to 1X, 1X, 1X. So we're still recording in the 60 FPS video recorder mode, 4K 60 FPS on the Phone 2, and then 1080p 60 on the Phone 2A Plus, 2A, and CMF Phone 1. We've switched to the ultra wide. Of course, the CMF Phone 1 does not have an ultra wide camera, so you won't see the field of view change. And we're just seeing how the image quality is like. 60 FPS on the ultra wide where available. Quick run. And 3, 2, 1. So we are now recording in the action mode on the Phone 2, the Phone 2A, the Phone 2A Plus, as well as the CMF Phone 1. This particular mode is limited to 1080p only, so this should give ultra stabilization. So we're going to give it a fast run and see how it performs. And 3, 2, 1. We're still recording in the action mode at 1080p 30. What I'm seeing is that there is an option to do this in the 2X mode on the Phone 2. So we're just going to see how the difference looks compared to the others. We are now recording in the 4K UHD 30 frames per second video recorder mode on the Nothing Phone 2, the 2A Plus, the 2A, and the CMF Phone 1. Now with me in the frame as a subject. Again, we do get sun today for once in the UK. 29th of July on a Monday. It's a good week and it's a good luck for today. We're going to take it. And we're just basically seeing how it is with me in the frame as a subject, as well as handling the environment with the exposure and the detail. We're going to do a very slow walk back. Doing this just to see if there's an exposure change in any way, if there's any movement. And stop. We're still recording in a 4K UHD 30 frames per second video recorder mode on the rear cameras for the Phone 2, 2A Plus, 2A, as well as the CMF Phone 1. What we've done is, with the Phone 2, 2A Plus, and the 2A, we've switched to the ultra wide. Again, the CMF Phone 1 doesn't have an ultra wide angle camera. We're just seeing how the image quality is like. Get another slow walk back. See if there's any exposure change. And we're going to stop. We are still recording in the 4K UHD 30 frames per second video recorder mode on the Phone 2, 2A Plus, 2A, as well as the CMF Phone 1. We've now gone into the 2X crop mode on the main wide sensor. We're just seeing how the image quality is like. We're now recording in the 4K UHD 60 frames per second video recorder mode on the Phone 2, 2A Plus, 2A, and the CMF Phone 1. With me in the frame as the subject, we're seeing how the image quality is like. And of course, with the 60 FPS mode, it is 4K 60 on the Phone 2, but 1080p 60 on the rest. let's switch to the 2x mode. I'm going to take a step back and be told if I'm in good framing. Happy here. And again, we're just seeing how the 2x mode is like in 60 FPS. And of course, it is 4K 60 on the phone too. And back to the 1x. And we're still recording in the 60 FPS mode on the phone 2, the phone 2A Plus, the 2A, as well as the CMF Phone 1. Of course, 4K 60 on the phone 2. We've now switched to the ultra wide angle camera where applicable, and just seeing how the image quality is like. We are now recording in the 4K UHD 30 frames a second video recording mode on the Nothing Phone 2, Phone 2A Plus, Phone 2A, and CMF Phone 1. And we're just seeing how the low light performance is like in 4K UHD on the rear cameras. Check the lens flaring. We've now switched to the ultra wide angle camera on the phone 2, the phone 2A Plus, the phone 2A, and the CMF Phone 1. Just to let you know, with the Nothing Phone 2, you can switch between the main wide sensor and the ultra wide while recording in 4K 30 continuously. You don't need to stop and then switch. Whereas with the phone 2A Plus as well as the phone 2A, you do have to stop recording. Then you have the ability to switch between the ultra wide and the main wide sensor. And of course, the poor CMF Phone 1 does not have an ultra wide angle camera. We've now switched back to the main wide sensor. And what we're going to do now is just go into the 2x mode, 2x mode, and just see how the image quality is like in low light as we do the 2x crop. And back to 1x, back to 1x, and back to 1x. We're now recording in the night video mode on the phone 2, the phone 2A Plus, the phone 2A, and the CMF Phone 1. Now this does cap this at 1080p 30 frames a second on the main camera, but let's just walk through the same sequence and see just on the main wide sensor how the image quality is like, especially when it comes to low light exposure improvement. So we are now recording in a 4K UHD 30 frames a second video recording mode on the main wide sensor on the rear camera on the phone 2, phone 2A Plus, phone 2A, as well as the CMF Phone 1. And we're just seeing how the image quality is like when we're checking the rear cameras to see how things are like. Hey. Hello. How are you? You right?
Yeah, good. What are you filming?
Just test some phones for the night. Yeah, just the image quality.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you a YouTuber?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
What do you do?
Test smartphones for a living.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Alright.
Yeah.
Fair play, brothers.
Nice one, man.
Appreciate
Easy.
it.
I'm definitely keeping that in there. We're now recording in the front-facing camera for the Nothing Phone 2A, Phone 2A Plus, Phone 2, and the CMF Phone 1. Now, what is interesting is, as we stated before, the Phone 2A Plus records in 4K 30 frames a second. It's actually the only one that can do that out of all these devices, even ahead of the Phone 2, which is meant to be the 2023 flagship from last year. Interesting. We've just seen how the image quality is like in low light. Now that's it with this definitive camera comparison between the Nothing Phone 2, the Nothing Phone 2A Plus, the Nothing Phone 2A, and the CMF Phone 1. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. That's it for me, Ben from Lover of Tech. If you enjoy videos like this, you know exactly what to do. Hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you're part of Team TLS, the Tech Lover Squad, so you don't miss any future videos on the channel. I hope you're all safe during this time. I will catch you in the next one. Peace.